So
Sure.
we can go there. So you brought up Armstead's leadership, right? And one thing that I noticed this year that I don't think many people really cared about, and I don't think it really matters, was that Nick Bosa went from being a team captain in 2022 to not being elected team captain this year when he missed the entire offseason, right? Makes sense. The guy wasn't there the entire offseason. He wasn't the team captain. But since Bosa has come to this defensive line, they've always had a long tenured player that is the leader, right? Buckner was the leader when he first came, and then Armstead pretty much took that role when Buckner left. A guy that everybody looks to, a guy that sets the tone, the guy that's the consummate professional. Not that Bosa isn't, but the other guy is the guy that everybody looks to as the veteran leadership. Do you think that there's going to be a difference now? Nick Bosa obviously got his money this offseason. We know he deserved it in terms of his on the play. Is there a different expectation on Nick Bosa this year now that he is the leader of the 49ers defensive line? Armstead is no longer the veteran in the room. The veteran in the room for the 49ers defensive line is now Nick Bosa. Of course, Hargrave is there, but I still think because Bosa was drafted by the team, he's been through this entire tenure, he would be the guy pressed upon for leadership. I'll start with you, Krug, because you've been in the locker room. You just talked about how meaningful Armstead's impact is. What do you think about Bosa? Do you think he can establish himself in that role? And do you think that's a key in terms of the 49ers being able to replace not just Armstead's effect on the field, but the intangible effect he provided in the locker room?
I think they need to find some really tough guys on their front in the draft, whether they be linebackers or defensive linemen. I think the leader is probably now goes back to Fred Warner, maybe a little bit of Dre Greenlaw when he gets healthy. I think those guys become the leaders. I mean, Nick Bosa leads by his play, but he's not a stand up and rally the troops kind of a guy. He does speak on Saturday nights now, but I think it's more personality driven. What's Malik Collins' personality? What's Leonard Floyd's personality? What's Jordan Elliott's personality? Can anybody really ascend? Can they find a unique player? I mean, Bryant Young, according to a lot of the 94 Niners, was one of the main leaders on that 94 team. He was a rookie, and so was Bar None. So leadership in the room has a lot more to do about your personality, I think, and your production more than just your pay and your production. You know what I mean? We look for the guys who make the most to lead, and Bosa will be a leader. I'm just saying that I don't think he's a natural leader. I think, a guy like Fred Warner is much more of a guys, let's get it going. And who knows, maybe one of the guys they signed in free agency on the defensive side is also a leader. Maybe they can find some leadership by who they draft. That will be interesting, but I definitely think they could use some tone setting players on their defense that they don't have right now.
Jesse, what do you think? You think that like Krug, they could use some tone setting presence, or do you think Bosa could maybe step up and be the leader of the defensive line? Or do you think like Krug, it's more of a Fred Warner and a group by committee? How do you think they replace Armstead's leadership specific to their defensive line?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what some of Floyd's a veteran. Maybe he brings that. Hargrave can step into that role potentially. I think, like Krug said, it's a personality trait. I think Greenlaw not being there early on, assuming he's going to miss some games, him and Armstead not being there, that could be a little bit tight. I've always wanted somebody like a Chris Jones on this team that would get in a player's face on a sideline, hold him accountable, just a tough, nasty guy. And I've talked about this in the past, and I've been told that guys like Fred are that guy. Now, Fred's a great leader. I'm not saying that he's not, and he'll get in the offense's head during practice, but it's very rare that you see an exchange on the sideline when two players are fired up and getting in each other's faces, trying to hold each other accountable. I feel like the 49ers have never really had that during this regime. That's not a shot at Shanahan or anything like that. It's just something that has been missing, a fire that's been missing from this team. Not saying that I want these guys to fight each other or anything crazy, but I don't think there's anything wrong with grabbing a team up by the face mask and being like, yo, you're not playing good enough in this moment. Let's go. So it's not just because Armstead's gone. Armstead didn't bring that either. I think this team could use that. Now, did you get that through free agency? I doubt it. Are you going to get that through the draft? Probably not. but it's something that I think that I've been desiring to have on this team for a while. And I don't think losing Armstead helps that. I don't think adding the guys that they added help that. It's just kind of something that's been missing, in my opinion.
That's a really interesting point. And I wonder if it just speaks to team culture. Because as
Mm,
you were saying that, I was just thinking about it, and I was like, I don't feel like any 49er on the team is really that kind of guy. They all
mhm.
seem to be more, hey, when my teammate's down, I'm going to uplift him. I'm going to be George Kittle and make a joke and get him up and get him going and hype him up. That seems to be more their vibe when they're down. Krug, again, you're around this team a lot. Do you find that to be the way they handle their downs, or do you think there is a, hey, Chris Jones, let's huddle up, and Chris Jones is going to talk to the team and he's going to tell the team, and everybody's going to listen to Chris Jones because he's the freaking man. He's made the big plays in the big games, and we're going to keep our poise listening to him. What do you think would be the Niners style?
I think they've got some really strong leaders on offense. I mean, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Kyle Juszczyk, Aaron Banks, JJ. I think those guys are all really kind of like the kind of they're guys who show up ready to play and demand their teammates play at their level. I mean, I thought maybe the greatest leadership I saw all year was Christian McCaffrey in the way he showed up to minicamp and then training camp, where it was just like, hey guys, I'm playing at my level and you guys can all look really bad or you can step it up. And I don't know if he ever said anything, but just the level that he played at was like demanded that other guys kind of meet that level. And I don't know who that player is on defense. Is it Demo Lenore? Is it Jair Brown? Is it Huff? Is it Fred? Is it Mooney? I don't know. I really don't know. I do think, though, just from being around their D line last year, that they could use a little bit more nasty up front. And maybe Collins, maybe Elliott, maybe Gross Matos, maybe Floyd, maybe those guys can deliver that. But they need a little bit more, like, some where you're in the room and you're like, I don't. Some of these guys are rough. They don't have a rough guy. Chris Jones is kind of rough. They don't have that guy that's like, man, you're a little on your pins and needles asking this guy questions because he's got this kind of anger streak. I think you need a little bit of that on defense, especially in your front, and I haven't seen that. So hopefully, either guys they signed or guys they draft can give them a little bit more juice, a little bit more anger, a little bit more like, hey man, I'm playing at this level, and you sure as hell better play at this level, or we're gonna have problems. I think they could use a couple guys like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what speaks to Fred Warner, right? When we're talking about this conversation, I don't think anybody is saying Fred Warner isn't one of the key leaders on the 49ers. But I think where his name kind of gets lost is you don't feel like he brings that nasty, or that you feel like Greenlaw is more of the physical presence of the Niners linebackers. Anybody who really watches the Niners, I feel like you can feel Greenlaw's physicality off the screen or on the screen or at the game more than you can feel Fred Warner. So I think that's where he falls in this conversation. And Krug,
Also,
not to
interrupt, but just I think it's important when at the end of the year people were calling out Chase Young for not playing hard. I asked that question the next day to Fred, and Fred was like, "Hey man, who am I to question how hard he's playing? He could kind of question how hard I'm playing, and it's like he wasn't that guy." And then when we got to the all 22 or the live mic version of the Super Bowl, there it was, Chase Young face to face with George Kittle, promising George Kittle, I'm going to give you everything I got. So I get the feeling that Kittle holds guys accountable a little bit more than Fred. I think Fred's a great player. Fred's a great example. Fred plays hard. I don't know that Fred gets in your face mask and says, dude, if you don't play hard, you and I are going to have a problem in the parking lot after. You know what I mean? I think they need that. They need that guy. I mean, you see it, guys. You saw it. Chris.
But I think it's more with Fred. I think let's stick with Fred for just a second when we're talking about needing that guy. Because when you talk about Fred, Okay, we can have debates. I thought last year was a very up and down, peak and valley season for Fred Warner. There were games on national TV where he was unreal, and that's why he was a first team All Pro. But there's also an Arizona game, week 12, that Fred Warner didn't play so well. There's a Cincinnati game in between. Fred Warner didn't play so well. There's a Minnesota game in between where Fred Warner didn't play so well. So there's those games. I personally felt like when I looked at Fred Warner in the playoffs, I thought there was a loss of confidence. I really did. And I thought that answer, Krug, that's not a confident answer from the leader of the 49ers defense when he is talking about the effort of somebody else. If Fred Warner is fully Fred Warner and fully confident in Fred Warner, there's no way he should be saying, well, Chase Young should be questioning my effort too. Who can question Fred Warner's effort on that team if he's Fred Warner and he's fully emerged as that leader? Do you think that that's a fair way to look at, hey, part of Kittle is that Kittle doesn't seem to lose that confidence. He always seems to think he's that star. I thought with Warner, there were moments last year where Warner wasn't 100% sure of how he was playing, and Warner could kind of feel that he couldn't control the game the same way he has in the past. Do you think that plays into his kind of answer during Super Bowl week about Chase Young and all of that? Jesse, maybe you can jump in on this first just because you've been a little bit out of the conversation.
Yeah. I think, it's interesting. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I want to say it was after the Steeler game or I think it was right before week 1. We were talking about Fred Warner, and I had made an offhanded comment saying, hey, Fred Warner is great, but he's not the tone setter. He's not the thumper. That's Greenlaw. And then I remember that first game, he met, who's the running back for the Steelers? Their bigger
Najee
running back.
Harris.
What's his name?
Najee
Harris. Yeah, he cracked Najee Harris in the A gap, and everybody's like, oh, see, you don't know what you're talking about. And then it was like 2 weeks later, he got Kyron Williams in the A gap and got ran over a little bit. And then you kind of saw where it's like, okay, he does the thing where he'll fly from the side and jump on a player's back and like put his weight on them until they fall down. And yeah, that, and so it's Fred Warner plays like I think his personality is, which is, for a lack of better term, it's a little bit finesse, right? I'm not saying he's not a tough guy. I'm not saying he's not a badass, but he's not Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw is like that dude. So to me, if Dre Greenlaw can maybe take over a bit of that leadership and kind of be that tough guy to get in people's faces, that would be great. He's definitely a guy that can hold people accountable. I saw some people in the chat talk about Demo. Demo's kind of taken on that tough guy persona, that chip on his shoulder persona. Yeah, I feel like a team needs different styles of leadership. You can't just have one style. You can't just have a bunch of jerks that are leaders. You can't have a bunch of guys that are the nice guys as leaders. You got to have a little bit of both, a little good cop, bad cop. And I feel like Fred Warner, when he's going against the offense, he sets a tone and can kind of be a jerk in practice towards the offense. But I don't know that he's that guy towards the defense when he's holding his teammates accountable, if you feel me. So that's what I feel like this team's missing.
100%. And that's right on, right? And he's talked about that too, because he talked about how Quan Alexander had to kind of bring that personality out of him. So it's not natural for him to be that kind of guy. Krug, I'll throw it to you with this. I feel like part of this is why Greenlaw's injury is one of the biggest questions of the 49ers this offseason. Maybe the single biggest one, because they need both of those guys to complement each other, right? Like Jesse said, Warner pretty much plays football like a chess player. He plays a very, very cerebral style of football. And he is paired with the gladiator, Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw is see anything that moves, hit it as hard as you possibly can. And they work with each other so perfectly because of that. And I do feel like as much, and I've been someone that hasn't done a good enough job of this, I've never given enough credit to the way they complement each other. I've only given credit to the cerebral style of Fred Warner. And I do think that we saw in enough moments last year that without the complement of Greenlaw, without that toughness, without that gladiator, the chess player can be a little bit overmatched. And I thought that happened a couple of times to Fred Warner. And in fact, I even thought it happened to him a little bit in the Super Bowl. Guys, we focused on Oren Burks a lot. And Oren Burks, for being Oren Burks and having to come into that game, to me, did the best job Oren Burks could have done. But he didn't get supported as he should have by one of the best players on the 49ers defense in Fred Warner on that day. That was not Fred Warner's best performance. And I think not having Greenlaw and where his confidence is all something we have to look forward to in the season. Krug, what do you think?
I just think this team has lost some really good tone setters over the last couple of years. Jimmy Ward was a really good tone setter. Emmanuel Mosley was a really good tone setter. They've lost some guys who are their tone setters, and they need to find not just football players, but tone setters. They need their Chris Jones. When the intensity is not dialed up, the guy who just absolutely demands it and gets it from everybody instantly. They need some tone setters on all three levels of their defense, on any part of their football team. Guys who say, you know what? Hell, if it's going down like that, it's not going down like that. And I think they miss Jimmy Ward dramatically. And I think they've missed some other tone setting players dramatically. And they're going to miss Eric. So they have to find some tone setting players. I think they have them on offense, though they could have that one nasty or two more nasty offensive linemen that really set the tone on the offensive line. But defensively, I think they've lost many of their tone setters, and I would even go with a lesser player in this draft if I felt he was a superior tone setter and was incredibly physical and was the kind of personality that demanded physicality out of the troops. So that's how I feel about it. I really believe they need some tone setters. That's why it's important that they go and meet all these guys and figure out not just physically what are they, but mentally, emotionally what are they, and what's their contribution going to be.
And Hufanga's coming back, and he certainly has the kind of energy and ability to be a guy that definitely gets people around him to play better. That would definitely be helpful for the 49ers for sure. Jesse, what do you think? Do you have a tone setter in mind that the Niners can target at this point? I look at it and I find that kind of guy is a hard guy to find, especially in the draft, in terms of finding a rookie. Like you said, Larry, Bryant Young impacting the 94 49ers early. Finding a rookie to have that level of confidence is very difficult too.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm sure that guy exists in the draft, but I don't know who that guy is. I think that's why Ayuk is so important, because I feel like Ayuk is kind of that guy on offense a little bit. Jawan Jennings and Ayuk are like the parallel of Dre Greenlaw, what Dre Greenlaw brings to the defense. You know, we talked about Fred Warner.
And Debo too.
Yeah.
Toughness,
yeah, but he's more tough with the ball. With the ball in his hands. Yeah. But I'm saying play in and play out. Like, he doesn't block with the intensity that those other guys do. You know what I mean?
I got you. That's my bad. Go ahead.
If Fred Warner was a boxer, he would be Floyd Mayweather, right? Great boxer, one of the best ever, but he wasn't getting in firefights. He was out thinking you in the ring, right? He's a technician. When I'm looking at like Dre Greenlaw, and it's like, oh no, he's Ricardo Mayorga. Like, he's smoking a heater on his way to the ring, ready to take somebody's head off. Like, that's what I'm talking about. So, you know, it's just a difference of style. Like I said, all styles play. Ultimately, I just want a team that wins. But, you know, I have thought about that for a while and said, man, you know, the tone setter thing I think it does play. It really does. And I think ultimately, you know, one of the things that I admired in the Chiefs in 2019, as much as I hated Frank Clark talking trash and all those things, I was like, man, those guys really, really come with a different style of intensity. And you can see like maybe why when the rubber met the road and it was like, you just got to go take this victory from the other team, you could see why maybe the Chiefs came out on top in 2019. And maybe that happened a little bit this year too. I don't know.